Well, welcome everyone to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, the need for voluntary benefits, part one in our series on voluntary benefits with nationally recognized voluntary benefit expert, Tim Martin. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Glad to be here.
When I think of voluntary benefits, I always am thinking on the other side of the fence where the employer sponsors a 401k. Sometimes it's a match.
Sure.
They give hospital health insurance. They may offer an HSA account.
Sure.
They might even have short and or long-term disability.
Right.
But when you're talking about voluntary benefits, you're talking about ancillary benefits, additional, and that the employer generally has to pay for.
Sure. A good friend of mine calls it enhanced benefits instead of voluntary benefits. It takes what the employer is already doing, and it adds another level of protection on top of that.
Now, when you're looking at it, give me some of the ideas. Like if I have a potpourri, a kind of a menu of choices here,
sure.
What am I looking at? What's a good little menu of voluntary benefits that I might want to consider?
Well, it really depends upon your situation. Some companies offer, like you said, short and long-term disability, and if they do, that's fantastic, but a lot of times they don't. And so that's probably the first place they want to start. And then they kind of take a look at their health issues. If there's a long history of cancer in their family, maybe that makes more sense to them than a heart attack program or something like that. But that's one of the nice things about voluntary benefits, enhanced benefits, if you will, is they get to choose what makes the most sense for them.
Okay, you just touched on something. I want to make sure I got that. Now, so family history.
Sure.
Not only my personal family history, but maybe if I have cancer in my family line,
Sure.
and I want to give an extra layer of protection, I'm always confused. Maybe you can set me straight. I'm always confused. What is the difference between critical illness, if I had cancer, right, and a cancer policy?
Well, that's a great question. A cancer policy is more or less a very small portion of a critical illness. It's a standalone policy. Usually a critical illness program, it covers more than one type of critical illness. It will cover typically cancer, stroke, heart attack, things of those nature, whereas a cancer program only covers cancer.
Okay, so if I had cardiac issues in my family line, if I had cancer, maybe I was predisposed to type 2 diabetes.
Right.
There are policies that I could elect that could cover those kind of specific ideas?
Absolutely. What's really happened in the healthcare arena, right? Long before the Affordable Care Act went into place, is that the deductibles were still skyrocketing, weren't they? And you had higher and higher copays. You had HSAs came in to kind of try and solve that, right? But the reality is that the real need for voluntary benefits hasn't changed since I started 22 years ago. Does that make sense?
So are you saying that in the last 22 years, when you give an elective, you get in front of a couple hundred employees, and you're talking about voluntary benefits, do they pepper you for those are three big items I just brought up. I'm wondering if there are other ones like, I brought up diabetes, I brought up cardio events,
right.
I brought up cancer. Are there additional things
that
they need to look at?
Sure, absolutely. We'll talk a little bit about that in great detail later, but accident program, for instance, is very, very popular, an intensive care program. So there's depending upon the carrier, there are a lot of options for them.
And is this, it's not double coverage though, is it? I mean, so if I have a full health plan with my employer, this is augmenting, but it's not actually doing double benefits.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a brick wall between a major medical plan and a voluntary benefit plan. The major medical carrier cannot deny coverage just because they had a voluntary plan. And so that really gives them some additional coverage. It doesn't add on top of it because, let's face it, whenever there's a serious accident or illness, what happens to people's expenses?
Wow, they go through the roof.
Yeah, they go up, right? The car still needs to get paid,
Right.
plus now they've got these deductibles, copays. And what typically happens to their income?
It goes down because they're on the fly.
So if your expenses are going up and your income is going down, that's not a very warm, fuzzy, comfortable place to be, is it?
Now, with these specific kinds of coverages that are voluntary or enhanced, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but now when I hear people like Aflac and different other companies,
Sure.
Now they're actually are they replacing income, or are they replacing the actual utility bill, the actual, rent or home mortgage? What are they replacing?
Well, that's really the person gets to use it however they want.
Oh,
the check
really?
goes directly to them, and then they can do whatever they want with it. You know, if they have a bunch of copays and deductibles, they can certainly use that for that. But the money goes to them.
Is it a hard bar to cross over to engage or trigger benefits?
No, not at all.
Really?
Yeah, not at all. For instance, an accident plan, you have to have had an accident. For cancer, you just have to have that initial diagnosis of cancer. The one thing about these voluntary benefits is that you typically go through the treatment first, and then you file for your claim, and then you get a check once they approve the claim. It's not something you take in your card to the emergency room and say, I've got this voluntary insurance, so here you go. They're not assigned benefits. The key term in the industry is you don't assign those benefits to anybody unless you want to.
All right, so are these programs, as I've heard you talk about this in the past, these programs are really designed, right, to not, if I'm hearing correctly, not to have long waiting periods or high deductibles. I mean, if you engage and you trigger the event, you are going to, and it's qualified under the program.
Right.
You're going to get your check.
Absolutely. And some of the carriers are, talking about same-day pay. A lot of them do that, actually. A lot of them turn around claims very, very fast. In fact, the typical time to turn around a claim at most of these carriers is 2 to 3 days. If it's a little more complicated, a disability situation, things like that, where they have to get records from the doctor, from the employer saying that person isn't working, then those can take longer. But yeah, it's very, very fast. Real quick story, I broke my daughter's arm. Now, don't call CPS on me, okay?
Nice.
It was an accident. But because I'm an agent, I knew how to file the claim, obviously, and that happened on a Friday. We took her to the emergency room on Saturday. I filed the claim on Sunday, just turned it in, and by Wednesday I had a check.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I wanted to tailor my benefits, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here. Walk me, make sure I'm not doing something heretical here. But if I wanted to keep a high deductible on med side, but I use these others because there's no deductible. I mean, there's instant gratification here if I have a problem. Could I not build or strategically build a kind of protectionist benefit package using volunteer benefits?
And that's absolutely the number one thing that is going on right now. Now I said it already. The need really hasn't changed, but the perceived need has because the deductibles are higher and those kinds of things. Let me tell you a real quick story about my mom. I lost my mom in 1998 to cancer, and she worked for Trevor Brown High School. Are you familiar with that? It's here in Phoenix. It's part of the Phoenix Union High School District. It's a little rough. In fact, they have metal detectors. They've had them for 25 years, something like that. So, but my mom loved working there. And school teachers, they don't get paid a lot. We'll agree with that, right? But what do they have typically? They have a really good benefits program, right? And my mom was no different. My mom, it's 20 years ago, right about now, she was diagnosed with cancer, and she went through a horrific amount of treatment. She had 2 surgeries. She was hospitalized 3 different times. She went through 28 radiation treatments, 28 radiation treatments, 6 different rounds of chemotherapy, and she was out of pocket less than $2,000 for her copays and deductibles.
Wow, total all in.
Total, all in, less than $2,000. Now, again, we'll keep politics out of this, but there's no way that we're ever going to see, again, in our lifetime, a program that's that good, right? So then why did my dad end up having to sell the house as my mom's battling cancer?
No income.
Yeah, neither one of them worked. Yeah, my dad didn't work because he was taking care of my mom. My mom obviously couldn't work.
Could they have purchased something in the event of unemployment?
No, not unemployment. So disability. My mom had short and long-term disability, and so did my dad. But my dad's disability didn't take care of anything unless he was the one that's disabled, right?
Gotcha.
So if they had a cancer program, a little cancer program that would have cost them, I looked this up and I made sure the numbers were right at the time. If they had this program that would have cost her $19 a paycheck twice a month, the insurance company would have paid them in excess of $76,000 that year. Now,
And what is that called?
that was a cancer program.
Okay, so specifically, and that's going to, how long will that income come in, or is it a lump sum?
It's not a lump sum. They do get a lump sum. Again, it really depends upon carrier. In this
Sure.
case, they would have got $5,000 up front, and then they would have received benefits as she sought treatment. So every time she was in the hospital, every time she had a radiation treatment, all of those
Sure.
things, she would have received a benefit for each one of those. And once I put it all together, like I said, it would have been in excess of $76,000.
Sounds like there's some designs here. If you have benefits at home now and you're looking at your employer and they offer it, you may want to start looking through this. Listen, don't forget to watch our next segment, the basic types of voluntary benefits, part 2 in our series on voluntary benefits. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.